welcome. We're back for another episode of A Welcome Diversion. And I have my guest with me today, Maylia Parker from Atlantic Canada. There have been a number of really interesting things going on in Atlantic Canada. The programs down there have expanded greatly, and all four provinces have news to relate. So we're very much looking forward to spending some time with Maylia today so that she can tell us about the Atlantic Canada experience and her time at the end of really her first year here at EPRA. So welcome, Maylia.
Thanks, Cliff. It's great to be here.
So, Maylia, tell me a little bit about what's happening in Atlantic Canada. Lots of expansion down there. What kinds of things have you been doing?
Well, this has been a big year in Atlantic Canada, Cliff. We've had expansions or the announcement of expansions in each of the four Atlantic provinces. It started in June in Nova Scotia. We added small household appliances. And then in October in Newfoundland, same thing, small household appliances. And at the same time in PEI, they added activity and fitness equipment. And then on the horizon, it was announced in the regulations, but not yet active, is an expansion in New Brunswick to basically bring New Brunswick up to the same as Nova Scotia and Newfoundland are with the small household appliances as well. So it's all about small household appliances in Atlantic Canada these days.
That's terrific. So that's quite an expansion and really puts Atlantic Canada in a place where they are ahead of most of the other provinces in this country. Really, from a small appliance perspective, British Columbia is the only other one that we have that operates in that space right now. So great advancement there. Do you see anything else happening in terms of Atlantic Canada and expansion?
Well, the expansion in PEI is something that's interesting. You know, they had already added small household appliances there a couple of years back, and so they expanded into fitness and activity equipment. And what I mean by that is e-bikes, e-scooters, your elliptical machines, treadmills, and even smartwatches, things like that. So we might see that follow suit in some of the other provinces. I find in Atlantic Canada, there's a real desire. We're smaller provinces, so there's a real desire to harmonize as much as possible to make it easier for people and businesses to understand what's happening in each of the provinces. You know, it's just hard to, where we're so small, it's hard to sort of go it alone. Another thing that has been talked about, I don't know if we'll go there, power tools perhaps on the horizon. Nothing's been announced yet, but that is a direction that we might see happen. The other item that isn't harmonized yet through the four provinces is floor standing printers. We do have them in PEI. They're going to have them in New Brunswick. We don't yet have them in Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, so we might see that come on board.
That's great. I mean, power tools themselves are something that we do in British Columbia. Do they have a different reverse supply chain? Do they have to be treated any differently than what you do with the traditional electronics that you get back?
No, really similar to the small household appliances. The materials are all basically the same. So the size, unlike the treadmills and ellipticals we had to add in PEI, which do have some logistical challenges just because they're so large, the power tools would really fit in nicely into the program that we have now. Someone could just drop it at the depot. You know, whether you're dropping off a drill or a toaster or a laptop, it's really the same thing.
And would they all go into the same receptacle? You'd be able to then just take them in the same place and take them back to be processed?
Yes, exactly. Yes, we have in Atlantic Canada over 200, between 200 and 250 drop-off locations. And you can bring the public or business can drop off to any of those locations. It would all go in the same bin. We have measures in place to ensure the security of those items. Of course, when it's a data-bearing device like a laptop or a computer, we do advise people to wipe their drives just to be safe. But all those materials go in the same bin. They all go to the same processor where they're broken down into their individual components. Because really, whether you're talking about a laptop, a toaster, or a drill, we have plastic, metal, glass, you know, it's the same materials. And what we're doing is breaking it down into those smaller materials so that it can go back into the manufacturing chain.
What I've seen over the years has been in Atlantic Canada almost a little bit of competition between the provinces with respect to who gets there first and who comes along next. And it does end up with a nice harmonized approach in terms of the products. But how do you see that going?
If it's a competition, it's a friendly competition. We're friendly on the East Coast. But yes, I would say between the provinces, all four provinces really take the environment very seriously and have different waste diversion targets that they're striving to meet. So, as an example, for PEI, very small province, not a lot of land mass, only one landfill. It's very important to them to divert from landfills. So that's one of the reasons that they're a leader. And also being a smaller population, sometimes it's easier to make moves. Nova Scotia has an act where they've committed to a waste reduction target of 300 kilograms per person, which would put them they're already one of the leaders in Atlantic Canada. That would certainly put them far ahead. New Brunswick recently passed a strategy also to do waste reduction. So there is this drive towards, and Newfoundland as well, also looking to divert waste with their own unique challenges given their population and just the size and remoteness of some of their communities. So yes, there is definitely a desire to promote waste diversion, move towards a circular economy. I like to say on the East Coast, we sort of grow up not wasting, and really when you're recycling electronics, you're getting those materials out of the electronics, making them into something new. It's not that far off of making a quilt out of old clothing, which we do on the East Coast. So I think it's part of our culture that we're really motivated to recycle.
Now, while you have harmonization there, you also have some unique challenges. So you spoke about PEI being the small province, both geographically and by population, the smallest in the country. But then you look at the diverse populations that you have spread out across Newfoundland and Labrador, or the fact that the last program that we added in 2017 was New Brunswick. So when you try and get awareness out to various populations, what methods are you using to get that population to know what they need to do? Because you have got some very different challenges in both the geography and the settings that you have for the four provinces.
Mm-hmm. Getting the word out is a challenge, and I don't think that's unique to us these days. Gone are the days where if we were on CBC, everyone would know. We don't all sit around watching the same news channel anymore. So we're really trying to diversify how we reach out to people. So in Atlantic Canada, I would say we focus on harmonization as much as possible, but also recognizing that diversity that we have. We're using a little bit more of social media. So with LinkedIn, business to business, we are on the radio, we are in the newspapers, on TV as well, using some local stations. We also hold events. So for the launch of the expansions we had this year in Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland, we held launch events to help get the word out with those. And at two of those events, we actually brought in our mobile classroom and were able to invite some local elementary school students there. I know you know about that because you were at one of those events. And so that was a lot of fun to engage young people as well.
The students really do add a dimension to things that is quite interesting. It causes kind of the whole mood to lighten and people to be a little more jovial and fun. And then getting the ministry out, whoever they may be, whether it's an MLA or whether it's the Minister of Environment themselves, having those people out to be able to speak is a great opportunity for them, both to promote what they're doing in the Yonge province, but also for them to be able to get recognized within the province for the leadership roles that they're playing. And so those things are quite unique.
Yes, and I found that there were some really big connections between the schools and the representatives we had from government at each of those events. For instance, in PEI, the MLA that was standing in for the minister was actually working as a breakfast champion at the school, and so the kids knew her and got to see her in this different capacity. And then the Minister of Environment in Nova Scotia, Minister Hallman, is a former teacher, so he just loved the opportunity to be, he taught high school history. He enjoyed being there with the elementary school kids for sure.
That's great. Now, just hearkening back to an earlier comment with respect to the exercise equipment, that seems like it brings some unique challenges in terms of the reverse supply chain. How do you think about that, and what are you seeing so far?
So as far as the reverse supply chain and where those materials will go, again, I think we're dealing with the same types of materials, plastic, glass, metals. But the challenge is really in the size of those items. And I'm very grateful that we're starting in Prince Edward Island, where we have some strong partnerships, working very closely with Island Waste Management, as well as some depot operators, and figuring out how best to package those goods for safe shipment, because of course we want to make sure that all of our workers involved throughout the entire chain of processing can handle those materials safely. Island Waste Management and the depot operators have developed ways to get those treadmills onto the pallets and get them safely wrapped. They've sent me pictures, and everything seems to be going really well. So we'll trial it here, and then hopefully, if it does expand in other provinces, we'll have some lessons learned that we can share.
That's great. And then when you think about what might be coming next, so I heard you mention power tools. Is there anything else that you see in Atlantic Canada that's going to come on the horizon?
That's a great question. Power tools does seem like an obvious step. The thing is that these days we're really just smartifying. Smartifying is a word I've made up, by the way. We're smartifying everything. I mean, you really see electronics showing up in so many items. So it's hard to say where it would go next. I know that in some other provinces, they're looking at things as solar panels, for instance. That would be definitely a different challenge. So I don't know if we'll see it going there. Be interested to hear what you think.
Well, they certainly do pose a different challenge. I guess the differentiation in solar panels is the home use, where you get one and you put it on your roof or in your backyard to heat your pool, those kinds of things. Those are sold through retail outlets and very easy for us to probably deal with. The bigger installations where they have a farm of solar panels has a revenue issue associated with it because those will have been paid for at the time. And as they come due to expire, you then have to figure out how you're going to charge to be able to recycle them. And that part is an issue. And the other part of solar panels at the moment is that there's nowhere in Canada that processes them. So there is a place in the States. I know in Europe that they're doing some of this as well. But it's kind of it's a thing that's on the horizon because, as you would say, there's been quite a number of installations across the country. And as they age and as they come up with newer technologies which are more efficient, we're going to start to see those into the reverse supply chain and being ready to be recycled. So we'll have to see where it goes, but it would be nice if we had somewhere here in Canada where we could recycle them, which we don't presently.
Yes, that's so true. There's really some strong ties between our programs and climate change, I think. So I do think that was a driver in PEI for adding e-bikes and e-scooters. You had government providing rebates, encouraging the purchase of those items, and then what do consumers do with them at end of life? And it's sort of a similar thing with solar panels. I think there's been a lot of incentives to install solar panels, and for good reason, but they do have a lifespan. And so
Yes.
what are people going to do with them at the end of that lifespan? And then, of course, another connection with climate change is a lot of the materials in our electronics can be repurposed and put back into the supply chain. That helps with some of the critical minerals we need to electrify. And it also helps with climate change because we're moving away from resource extraction and towards resource recovery.
And that change in terms of getting more from resource recovery, there's relations that I've seen before in terms of the amount of energy and effort required to extract minerals from the ground versus the recovery efforts. And some people have even said there's a 10 times factor involved with respect to the ability to be able to recover those materials. And as you say, in many cases, there are commodities that we're not going to have forever. There is a limited amount on the planet, and we need to be careful in terms of recovering those things. Not always an easy equation, and something that I think is a challenge as we move forward for all of us.
Absolutely. Will we be able to move away from mining altogether? I'm not sure. But it doesn't make sense to take something that's really valuable and just throw it away in the landfill. Like, why wouldn't we want to recover that value? So I really think as complementary to mining or to reduce the impacts of mining, to recover as much as we can and essentially mine our existing electronics is really the way to go.
And I would think about the recovery phase of things and what's gone on in Atlantic Canada. You're now at a phase where you are nearly caught up with the rest of the country. BC a little bit ahead of everybody else, but really much more advanced than the central provinces or the prairie provinces. And so when you look at that and think about where you've come from and where you are now, as a region, you must be very proud of kind of what you've been able to accomplish.
Are Atlantic Canadians proud? Absolutely. Yes, yeah, we are proud. We do see ourselves as leaders in waste diversion, and it's something that, we want to maintain. We do take a look across the country and see where we're at, and we want to stay a leader for sure.
Yes, that's great. Well, listen, I've really enjoyed our time together today. I think that the progress in Atlantic Canada is terrific. And as you cited earlier, they're not only just a very efficient bunch, but they're also a very friendly bunch. And anytime that I'm down there, I know I feel right at home. So thank you for making it so much fun today. I appreciate what you've been able to do in terms of the podcast. And we look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thanks, Cliff. Can't wait to see you on the East Coast.
Welcome Diversion is brought to you by EPRA Recycle My Electronics. To find the location nearest you, visit recyclemyelectronics.ca. The future is in your hands. Don't let it go to waste.